A good man, out of the good treasure of the heart, speaks good things. An evil man, out of the evil treasure in the heart, speaks evil things. For out of the abundance of the heart does the mouth speak. It's a quote from Jesus. Out of the abundance of the heart does the mouth speak. Consider this when you hear, say, things people write or hear things people say. When you see people repeatedly using abusive language or repeatedly creating particular narratives around events, using their words to paint certain narratives about the events that happen or actions that have been performed or taken place. Consider this. Not all words carry the same weight. In fact, not all characterizations of things carry the same weight or the same level of truth or falsehood. Nor do they all carry the same intentional distortion. Some things might not be totally accurate, but they're not intended to be damaging. Some things are inaccurate and are very divisive. And are intended to be divisive. There's reason and motive behind it. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. For a bad tree cannot bear good fruit, and a good tree cannot bear bad fruit. I think I said that correctly. I'm thinking it over about what I just said. People get so it would appear on the surface that people get so opinionated and they run into so much conflict with one another about religious meaning, religious ideology, interpretation. I forgot where I was going with that. I think much of it is blown out of proportion. This statement: a good man or a good person, out of the good treasure in his heart, brings forth good things, or speaks good things. And an evil person, out of the evil treasure in the heart, speaks evil things. For out of the abundance of the heart does the mouth speak. That's true whether a person is Christian, Buddhist, Hindu, Muslim. It's true regardless of the denomination of their religion. It's true whether they're Republican or Democrat, conservative, liberal. It's true whether they are Caucasian, African, Asian. My brain is blanking out. Sorry to the other ethnicities that I might not have mentioned. Latino, of course. Latino brothers and sisters. Arab as well. Whatever it is, this matter is simply true about human beings, regardless of class, regardless of religion, regardless of social status, regardless of race, regardless of gender, of regardless of sex, regardless. But people want to argue about intricacies in religion or in politics when they're not even acting right, when they're not treating their fellow human being with respect and goodness. I can tell you. Maybe I shouldn't say that. There are many Buddhists, Hindus, Muslims, whatever other religions that I would rather enjoy heaven with than some so-called Christians. And I'm sure that's true for people in other cultures and religions. I'm sure that there's people that feel the same way. There's simply good and bad, kind and, mean and abusive people, regardless of what race, religion. I don't want to get too religiously political here. There's some that would say, well, what dictates in Christianity, they would say, what dictates getting into heaven or not is based on acceptance of Jesus Christ. It's not based on, how good of a person you are. And, we're all sinners. And it's about acceptance of Jesus Christ. And I would say, and I've felt this and experienced this for a long time, both simply due to reason, but as well due to spiritual experience. That is not just a verbal thing. That is not a verbal um, claim. I think acceptance of Christ is deeper and more universal, you could say, than reciting a creed, claiming a belief. It's more a matter of the heart. And I think if you openly read Jesus' words, there's a lot of evidence for that. And I think it's also just sensible and reasonable if you simply consider it. I think that this quote alone suggests that or implies that a good man or a good person, out of the good treasure of the heart, brings forth good things with their mouth. I'm trying to remember the exact translation. An evil person, out of the evil treasure of the heart, speaks evil things. For out of the abundance of the heart does the mouth speak. I wasn't really trying to make a political or religious political statement. The whole point of what I was saying was tied back to Jesus' words here. Jesus doesn't make distinctions here about religion, about race, about political stance. That's not what he says. He simply says a good person out of the good treasure of the heart speaks good things. And an evil person out of the evil treasure of the heart speaks evil. For out of the abundance of the heart does the mouth speak. There's so much in here that, politicized religious mind could get at and we could talk about. if you are more attached to your ideology than goodness, which I would really hope I don't have to define or describe, but it seems like we're in a day and age where it might be necessary. Here, I think you can refer back to the things that Jesus lists or implies as good: compassion, love for everyone, love your neighbor as yourself, as Jesus says, and also love your enemy, mercy. He says, blessed are the merciful, for they shall be shown mercy. Pray for those who curse you, or rather, bless those who curse you. Pray for those who persecute you and use you. So if your ideology, whether religious or political or whatever else, is more important to you than the goodness of the heart, then you've missed what Jesus is about. Goodness of the heart does not mean that person's going to be perfect all the time. That doesn't mean that all their actions are going to be perfect throughout their life. Doesn't mean that they're never going to make a mistake or never going to do anything that is morally wrong or questionable or even is harmful to someone. It doesn't mean that. That's, just an unrealistic expectation. But there is a difference between having a good heart and having a wicked heart. There's a difference between choosing good and being compassionate and being loving and, even seeking repentance, a word that maybe is not very well understood in this day and age, understandably. Those are all qualities of a good heart. Seeking repentance to make amends for mistakes, to do better, to improve. Those are all qualities of goodness. Qualities of wickedness or evil would be more in line with, often really more with just ignorance, lack of awareness. Things like, well, of course, things like harming others, putting self gain over the good of others, as in like harming people, hurting people, doing harm at the expense of selfish gain. And instead of reflection and acknowledgement of mistakes, personal mistakes, or harming others, instead justification or blaming others, faulting others, not making amends. These things are not so complicated, but unfortunately, our ideologies, religious, political, otherwise, make these things really muddy the water, really make a mess of things. It doesn't have to be so complicated. I guess I'm I'm saying what I've said, particularly in a in a Christian domain, or in regards to Christians or followers of Jesus, because the quote was Christian, and because I live in what's predominantly and historically a Christian culture. That doesn't mean officially there is no nation religion. That shouldn't be a political statement. But obviously, I live in a culture and come from a culture that has a lot of Christian history to it, Christian tradition to it. But these things are also true of other traditions, I would say. I don't really want to say religions because I think it puts a certain sort of shade, certain sort of perspective on these just histories, these traditions, spiritual traditions. That's what it is ultimately. It's human beings experiencing life, spirituality. So I would say all I'm getting at is if you're more attached, if we are more attached to our ideology than to what we can simply say as the qualities of goodness, then we've missed the point. We've missed what Jesus is about. We've missed what Gautama Siddhartha, the Buddha, is about. We've missed what Krishna is about. Um, that's it. I won't say that there aren't any, I don't know. I won't say that there haven't been any religious traditions or practice or diversions in history that weren't what we could describe as wicked. I won't say that, but I can just imagine people, having that sort of objection. But to assume that is ignorant. It's foolish. It's just foolish. Fortunately, you're not your thoughts. So the thoughts that you get caught up in and identified, but when they get called out, you don't have to be offended by them being called out because you're not them. It's ridiculous when, as people, we're arguing and fighting one another when we don't understand what one another's tradition and practices are about, and when we're missing the point that um, collectively, the people involved, that their practices and traditions are about common things such as peace, love, compassion, truth. It's foolish for us to be at each other's throats about it, metaphorically, as well as sometimes literally. It's ridiculous. And maybe this is my opinion, but I think it's pretty clear that that's not something that Jesus or any other of the people I've mentioned would, Krishna or Buddha, would be in support of. A good person, out of the good treasure of the heart, brings forth good things. And a person with an evil heart, now that the evil treasure of the heart brings forth evil things. For out of the abundance of the heart does the mouth speak. Just meditate on that. For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. People who speak divisive things, who speak abusive things, offensive things. Of course, we all at times say something that someone might be offended by. That's a different matter. But a person who perpetually speaks divisive things, abusive, offensive things, regardless of their political or regardless of their religious or political standing or class standing or whatever else, what does that say about where their heart is? That's what matters when it comes to true religion, when it comes to spirituality, when it comes to the spirit, when it comes to the divine. That's what matters. What does it say about our hearts? Now, I'm not saying this so that you go out and criticize others. There's times to call things out. There's times where it's important to speak up. There's times where it's not, and where just letting it go is probably better. There's times where it's important to speak up. We're in times where a lot of people feel that way. Jesus, despite his compassion, despite his love, despite his understanding and patience, spoke up. Despite his willingness to reconcile with people, he spoke up. He called things out as they needed to be. He called out wicked speech coming from wicked hearts. He called us to check our hearts, to check the wickedness that we might find in our hearts. While you can do something about it. Prune that tree while you can do something about it. For a bad tree cannot bring about good fruit, nor can a good tree produce bad fruit. So, while it's important to be discerning about this, about the speech of people, other people, and to be discerning about what that says about their hearts, at least in those times when they're saying those things that you're hearing or reading, is also important, maybe more important, to have awareness about that regarding ourselves. Because if we don't have self-awareness, there's that quote, I don't remember how it goes right now. But basically, if you want to change the world, change yourself. Now, if you've done that work, fantastic. See what there is for you to do in the world, and always be willing to do the work on yourself once again. But the point is obviously that things start with us, and it's important to check yourself. It's important to have self-awareness. I think most of us know of people that seem to criticize and point out the faults of others, but seem to be blind to that in themselves. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Just meditate on it, contemplate it, pray on it.